Shame sits at the very bottom of the human emotional ladder. And it's the thing that keeps us the most trapped in our lives. It'll be of no surprise to you that shame is attached to things like addiction, self-destructive behaviors, depression, etc. But also, another place that you can see it is in something like people-pleasing behaviors, where somebody doesn't feel worthy of love itself, so they go out and people please all over the place. Or somebody who's constantly hiding their mistakes, hiding their flaws, trying to appear perfect outside so that nobody can see the ugly, dirty, real me. So before going into where these things have come from, let's define the differences of shame and guilt, because those two are at the bottom of this list here. So guilt is when you feel bad because of something you did. It's more tied to your behavior, not your identity. Shame goes even deeper, and that's why it's even more destructive, because shame is not, I did something wrong. It's, I am wrong. Not, I did something bad. I am bad. Not, I did something dirty, but I am dirty. So that's why it's the most destructive, disgusting, difficult thing in our lives. Shame. And we're going to have to get rid of that. So before going into how to heal ourselves from shame, let's talk about where this has come from. For some people, it has come as early as in the womb. When they were little babies being formed in the womb, maybe they were rejected. Maybe they were an unwanted pregnancy. And in their development in utero, they were already feeling this rejection. The stress, the cortisol hits were all going to that baby. Now, it doesn't have to be that early. Sometimes just early on in their childhood, they may have felt that rejection. Maybe there was an abandonment of the child, like they were not even really taken care of. Some people were left to cry for hours without being checked up on. You know, these things are real life scenarios that people deal with. You know, we see them walking around and we have no idea. We don't know that this stuff has happened in their past, but this has trapped them into shame. There's also parental expectations, right? Your mother and father expected something from you. They wanted you to be a certain way. Whether it was physically, emotionally, psychologically, whatever. They wanted you to be a certain way. And then if you weren't that way, rejection. And you felt that rejection. And as a child, you don't understand what's going on. You don't know that that's their problem, that they're the ones that are wrong. You internalize them. You see this a lot also in people whose parents got divorced, right? The child thinks it's their fault. If only I was better. If only I didn't do X, Y, and Z, then my parents would love me. That's a very sad one too, that gets ingrained and stuck within a person and causes a lot of internal shame. And then there's also the sexual issues that happen when a parent sees a child touching themselves, exploring themselves for the first time. And that is met with rejection, with you're nasty, you're dirty, right? That happens too, especially with overly, let's say, religious parents or prudish parents, something like that. I was speaking to 5 different men in a group circle one time, and we were talking about this stuff. And we were talking about the Oedipal complex, which happens normally between the ages of 3 to 7. And many people have a sexual growth during this time, and they start loving the parent of the opposite sex. And they start feeling like, ooh, man, they're feeling some type of way. And sometimes what happens is that a mother, let's say, seduces a little bit their child. Like they're starting to like this. They're like, ooh, yeah, my child likes me. They're not trying to do it sexually, but they love the attention that they're getting from their child. So they kind of like push it a little bit. And then when the child starts acting on it, like goes to touch their parent's breast or tries to do something, they're like, no, dirty, no. So they get like almost seduced and then broken. Seduced and then told they're wrong. Seduced and being like, ew, you're dirty. That's a real thing that has happened in all these 5 guys that I was speaking to. They all had a certain scenario that is like that. So I know this is true from real life experience. Now, from talking to many people, I know that, there's real abuse. There's real trauma that has happened in people's lives. Sometimes it was caused by siblings, maybe uncles or aunts who have either sexually, physically, emotionally abused them early on. And that made them feel like they were ridiculed, undeserving, unworthy, that maybe they were scolded for things that were not right, especially early on, before the age of 7. A kid doesn't really know what he's doing, you know? And then they were just abused in so many different ways. These are traumatic experiences that many people have had. So let's go into now what's going on in the body when you experience this type of rejection, this type of shame, this type of difficulty from your parents, from your siblings, from your aunts and uncles, etc. What ends up happening is that you internalize this. Yeah, you internalize it in your heart, of course, where now you're closed off. But there's much more that goes on, especially if it was like sexual shame. Then your hips and your pelvis become tight. You actually decide, your body and mind decide that part is dirty, that part is wrong. So you cut off your feeling from that area. The way we cut off feeling is we cut off our breath, and then we also get what we call neurotic holding patterns around that area that keep it tight so that we can't feel it anymore. So that if the emergence of sexual feeling was to come up, it doesn't really matter because it's tight and I'm not feeling it. I'm holding on. I'm clenching. So when we work with somebody bioenergetically, of course we have to look at their body, but there's specific areas that everybody who is dealing with shame has and could work on. Number 1 is grounding. Grounding is huge because if somebody is with shame, then they don't feel worthy, they don't feel stable, they don't feel like, I deserve to be here, I am worthy to be here. By working on grounding, boom, you feel very solid in yourself. You feel like you are on the ground and you belong here. So grounding is going to be one of those that everybody who's working on shame does. Now, the other part that's sexual related is, of course, the hips and pelvis area. That part is the most important out of all of them, I think, that a person with shame should work on. Release stored sexual shame. Moving up the body, we also work on the chest and the heart. Because when you were rejected in that way, there is a closed offness. There's a blockage that you had to do to your heart. Because as a little baby and as a little kid, your heart is open. You're open to love. You're giving it all, right? You're just like doing you. And then when you get rejected, you block it off. You're like, oh man, there's real heartbreak that has happened to people who are stuck in shame. So there's a closeness of the heart. There's neurotic holding patterns around here so that I will not be hurt anymore. Then there's also many times a forward posture of the shoulders, right? Because it's like a protection mechanism. You want to protect this area. You've been hurt, So there's this sense of I can't be open and free to give to love because I've been hurt and I am dirty and I am unworthy. So there's a closed offness that we have to open up. Now, psychologically, you can talk to someone or even journal, right? And let yourself know where this shame has come from. What is going on internally that has led you into shame? Some things, of course, early childhood, you won't even really be able to remember, but there might be some things that you can. Now, the difficulty with dealing with shame is that I can tell you that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you're good, that you're okay, all this type of stuff. But the shame is internal. It's already in there. It's stuck. So you can hear that and say, yeah, I get it. I know. Yeah. but it doesn't penetrate. It doesn't really transform. I think for me, the only thing that really transformed myself in this regard when it comes to just psychological talking to a therapist was when I was speaking about my shame. And one of the shame that I had was that I was poor. I was born poor. My dad was not part of my life. He left us when I was 6 months in the womb. And my mom never remarried. She's an immigrant, all this type of stuff, you know? She was working as a house cleaner. I was living in this rich neighborhood. When it came to the part where I was like in high school, my friends were getting Audis and Beamers and their parents were giving them all this stuff. And then it really sunk how poor I was. And I had a lot of shame. I had a lot of shame internally because of it. And what my therapist said was, okay, that might all be true. And we worked on all this type of stuff and we went through it. And then he said, which part of that was your fault? Which part of that did you have control over? And the truth was that none of it. I had no control of who was my parents, where I grew up, what their situation was, how they interacted, etc., you know, what has happened. So that was kind of healing for me, where it was just like, wow, okay, you know what? None of this is my fault. And now I can move on. And now what matters is what I do from here on in. That might be a psychological framework that is worthy of looking into. Where does my shame come from and what part of it was actually my fault? And most likely, it wasn't your fault. It had nothing to do with you. Now, when it comes to the spiritual dimension of shame, this is one of the parts where we really have to work on our identity. Who am I and who is God? And for me, I understand that God is another personal God that loves me deeply. I am a beloved son of God. That makes a big difference when you really know that you are a beloved son, where you are cared for and you are loved by God. Not just saying the words, but really encountering the love of God. And many times we have to reject the lies and affirm the truth that I am a beloved son. In spiritual direction, that's a lot of what we do. In healing prayers, that's exactly what we do. We talk to someone, we get to know their reality, and we reject the lie that I am dirty. I reject the lie that I am unworthy. I reject the lie that I am powerless, that I am unlovable. I reject the lie that things are hopeless. I reject those lies. And then I affirm the truth that I am a beloved child of God. Those things are important when it comes to freeing ourselves in the spiritual sense. And it should be done in a prayerful experience, either with someone else, a spiritual director, or on your own. You know, I affirm the truth that I am not abandoned. I affirm the truth that I am one with God, that God will never leave me, that God is my Father, that I am free to live in the light, in the truth, and in the goodness of God. I believe that I will see the kingdom here in the land of the living. I believe, I trust, I have faith. Now, it's hard to do that when you aren't in shame, of course. But that's why the important thing here is also rejecting the lies. In the book Be Healed, which is all about body, mind, and spirit healing, it's quite amazing. I went through a whole coursework on it, and we were talking about the different lies. When it comes to shame, it's I am bad, I am dirty, I am perverted, or it's my fault. Those are the difficulties that someone with shame is dealing with. And at the root cause, there's different lies that we've begun to believe about ourselves. If I trust, I'll be hurt, and I need to protect myself, or something bad will happen. I am not loved. No one wants or desires me. I am not good enough, and I am not valued or important. Another big lie is that I'm helpless. I don't know what to do and everything is out of my control. And there's big wounds that happen because of this. The wounds of rejection, the wounds of being in fear, the wounds of feeling powerless. And many times that has happened because of the early childhood experience. Because in those moments you were powerless. You were a little child. And then because of that experience, then you have this root of sin, which you want to do it all yourself. Ungodly self-reliance. I can't trust even God. I can't trust anybody. I got to do it myself. I am all alone. I got to figure this out myself. Nobody's coming to save me. Nobody's coming to help me. I know this experience very well, where I felt very, very alone and never was able to open up to other people. That might be your experience as well. And many times the deadly sin that comes from this one is anger. Anger. We're angry at the world. We're angry at everybody. We don't trust. We really just hold in that anger. And we definitely don't want to look into the sadness. So anger feels like a little bit of a stronger emotion than sadness, than shame. So we try to reject that, forget it, and say, nah, I'm going to move forward, but I'm going to do it in anger. We don't consciously say that, of course, but in our actions, we become either sadistic or masochistic, destroying everybody else in order to feel good for ourselves, or internal destruction, right? We talked about self-destructive behaviors. A lot of that happens. Some of the fruits, the sins of the flesh are rage, revenge, retaliation, murder, violence, malice, verbal abuse, insults, slander. And some of the other ones are self-righteousness, judgment, bitterness, resentment, depression, passive-aggressive behavior, gossip, and sarcasm. And all of that comes from our internal shame. That's like, instead of us building up our own building, we want to destroy everybody else's so that we have the tallest building. In our mind, in our heart, we start rejecting others and criticizing others, hating others, being angry towards others. We don't believe, we don't trust, we're not in a good state. Shame is destructive. It's not connective. It's not unitive. You don't have any real connection with God. You don't really have a connection with other people. You are in a place of not feeling worthy, and because of that unworthiness, it's really hard for someone to actually touch you, to actually be there, especially when you're in deep shame. If you got a little shame though, what I would say is start working on the body. Start working on releasing it yourself. Start there, and then open up. Find someone to open up to. Find someone that you can a little bit trust. Be like, all right, I'll attempt to trust you and tell you about these little things that have happened in my life that are actually big things. Start sharing your heart. You can share it with God in prayer, rejecting these issues, rejecting these lies, rejecting these inner vows that you've made, that I will never trust anybody again, that I will do it all myself, etc. Start rejecting those and accepting the truth of who you are, what your identity is. And I would definitely suggest going to see somebody to talk to about it. And when it comes to deep shame, we have to discuss it in order to so that it's not hidden. Do not leave it hidden. These things come, oh man, I've heard so many of it as a friar. I've heard years of people telling me the deep pain, the deep struggles that they've had to deal with. Working with Elliot Hulse for 3 years, I've heard men tell me the deep stuff that have happened in their lives. Thinking of one guy right now who said his father used to get drunk. Tell him to go get the alcohol for him. Go get me a beer. You know? And he'd have to help his dad get drunk. And if he ever said, no, Dad, you're done or whatever, he would get beaten. Beaten. You know what that does psychologically to someone, emotionally to someone? You're helping your dad get drunk, and then also he saw his mom get abused, all this type of stuff. That stuff is real. We've dealt with real serious stuff, and it affects us emotionally, and it affects us deeply. But now, guess what? We can get to the point of saying, you know what? That was not my fault. I think that's the biggest thing. It was not my fault. But what I do from now on is my responsibility. I can move past this. And one of the ways is bioenergetics, use the body-mind connection. Another way is psychological. It's not your fault. What has happened? See that it's not your fault. And then the last one is spiritual. Talk to God. Open up to God. Reject the lies. Reject the BS that's been attacking you and staying with you. That is not letting you live in freedom. That is trapping you. That is an emotional stronghold in your life. Reject that and affirm the truth that you are a beloved son or a daughter of the Most High God. And that love, let it penetrate you deeply in your life. Let it be real in your life. Because this God, our God, loves us deeply. And it's so beautiful to have that encounter with the one that can give us all things, that loves us and would die for us, would die for you, would come down to the world, become a man, degrade himself, humble himself, die the worst type of death, even if it was just you. If it was just you, that's how much love God has for you. He wants not only for your fixing and healing, he wants a relationship. He wants that connection with you. Open up that space for connection. This will be huge. Much love. Peace.